Today on Upfront, the governor calls for scrapping the state agency that oversees elections and government ethics. Next, the chairman of the Government Accountability Board answers to criticism. Then, counting votes ahead of the Assembly's Milwaukee Arena decision. Minority Leader Peter Barca on whether Democrats will provide a margin for victory. And Scott Walker leads the polls in Iowa. What these early surveys say about the race for 2016 right now.
Covering the issues important to Wisconsin. This is Up Front with Mike Goucher.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Up Front. The agency that oversees elections and ethics in Wisconsin could look dramatically different a year from now. In fact, it might not even exist. Last week, Governor Walker called for dismantling the Government Accountability Board and replacing it with something new. Republican legislative leaders have called the GAB a rogue agency that ignores state laws. Democrats counter that Republicans want to turn the GAB from a watchdog into a lapdog. We're talking about this now with GAB Chairman Judge Gerald Nickel, retired Dane County Circuit Court judge and a former Republican district attorney, reappointed to the board by Governor Walker. He's at our Madison affiliate, WKOW-TV. Judge Nickel, thanks very much for being with us, and let's get right to it. The governor says he would like to dismantle the GAB and replace it with something that he says is truly accountable to the people of Wisconsin. What's your response to that?
Well, I think the GAB in its current structure is very responsible to the people and the public of the state of Wisconsin. And you have 6 retired reserve judges who are nonpartisan, can't be involved in politics, that have the oversight of the agency and meet on a regular basis to review the agency and all of its obligations to the people of the state.
The critics of the agency say it's been unfair to Republicans. They're particularly unhappy with the GAB's role in the John Doe investigation of alleged campaign coordination. They say that investigation led authorities to raid the homes of individuals, frightening raids. They feel that the conduct was inappropriate and a harassment of conservative groups. How do you respond to those critics?
Well, you have to remember that the Attorney General J.B. Van Hollen referred the Milwaukee District Attorney to the GAB with the subject matter of the John Doe, and so the the District Attorney John Chisholm came to us with information and material and asked us to evaluate it, which was our obligation, and based upon what we felt was the existing law at that time, we authorized an investigation and gave assistance, but we did not actually do the John Doe itself.
Do you have any regrets about the GAB's involvement in the John Doe when you look back on it?
No, I don't, because, you know, one of the fears you have when you've been here, and I've been on the GAB from the beginning, so I've been there 8 years, is money in politics. And when you have these outside groups with scads of money looking to spend it on candidates and on issues, it should be transparent, and people should be accountable, and the public should have full knowledge of what's going on.
I'd like to have you address something that you hear a lot, and that is calls for the resignation of Kevin Kennedy. Do you feel that some of the issues with the GAB would go away if, I guess you could put it, Kevin Kennedy went away?
I think that could be a possibility. I know I've spoken with Assembly Leader Boss, and I know that he has a strong distaste or dislike for Kevin Kennedy. But I can tell you that in the 8 years that I've been on the board, Kevin Kennedy, I have nothing but the utmost respect for him. He's a national leader in elections and election law, and the people of the state of Wisconsin are well served by his services.
You don't think he should resign then, I take it? I
don't think he should resign. He serves at our pleasure, and we review him every year in terms of his performance. And I have no qualms with his leadership, and he certainly has a great staff.
The criticism of Kevin Kennedy and the staff tends to be that they operate on their own, that the board is somewhat disconnected from the operations of the staff at the GAB. What's your take on that?
Well, I'm the chair now, and my wife tells me I talk to Kevin Kennedy more than I do her. So there's constant contact. In the 8 years I've been on the board, I've always been aware of what's going on, except that we don't want to micromanage. And we want them to do their job and meet their responsibilities. And we have many.
Judge Nickel, what will you do between now and the next couple of months before legislation is drafted? And I assume that legislation will create something that looks quite different than the current configuration of the GAB. What do you do to address that possibility? Can you do anything?
Well, I think we can invite or convene a meeting with some of the leadership and answer their concerns. You know, it's kind of interesting. Until the John Doe came up, other than a hiccup here or there with the recalls, we have not had any feedback as to a lack of performance by the GAB in meeting its obligations. And you have to remember, the obligation of the GAB is to educate all the poll workers in the state of Wisconsin. That's 1,853 different polling places in 72 counties. We regulate the lobbyists and make them register and comply with the lobbying laws. And we deal with ethics violations of state officials. And that's a lot on our plate. We only have a staff of 40 people. And I think we've done a very, very good job.
You were comfortable with the results of the audit that was done a while back that did point to some areas that needed improvement and needed work in the agency?
Yes, and I welcome an audit. And the things that they cited us for, we have addressed, and they have now been resolved.
Judge Gerald Nickel, the chair of the Government Accountability Board, we appreciate your time today. Thanks very much for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
You bet. Milwaukee Arena deal faces a make-or-break vote Tuesday in the State Assembly. Will there be enough Democratic support to pass it? I'll ask Minority Leader Peter Barca to count heads. That's next on Up Front.
Up Front with Mike Goucher, brought to you by the American Transmission Company.